Today we had to terminate School Resource Deputy Jonathan Cross for his conduct on April 30th, 2019 at Waitman Middle School in Wesley Chapel. He was terminated for conduct unbecoming and use of mishandling of a weapon. The incident occurred in the school cafeteria during lunch period. You can see in the school security camera, he is standing there against a wall. There's children everywhere. His actions with his weapon caused it to fire. I just want to thank God that no kids were hurt. Nobody in that lunchroom was hurt. There was approximately 10 kids there. And, you know, it's sad what we have to do today. It would have been tragic if a child was harmed. Let me just first dispel a rumor that was out there that he had returned to work. He never did. From that day forward until today, he has been on administrative leave. The other question we get out there is, why did this take so long? We only get one shot to do it right. These are long cases, a lot of things that come into it, but from an agency standpoint, you know, our integrity is on the line, the trust of the community is on the line. You don't want to rush into something and then have to go back and back and back. And we're human beings, and we, you know, during these investigations, they take some time, but at the same time, as we want to make sure when we do it to the best of our ability the first time. So after this incident occurred, our armor took the weapon, inspected it, and they found there was nothing wrong. FDLE, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, conducted independent tests of the weapon. They found there was nothing wrong with the duty weapon. So let me just repeat that. There was nothing wrong with the weapon. From the Pasco Sheriff's Office standpoint to an independent study by the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, there was nothing wrong with the handgun. We then went to the state attorney's office and presented a case for culpable negligence. They chose not to criminally charge, but stated in their letter, the prosecution is not warranted and is better handled administratively by the Pasco Sheriff's Office, which we did. The former member and his attorney had the right, which they utilized, to follow up on questions, review notes, and make allegations which were disproven by our detectives. This is a process, and they have rights under the Policeman Bill of Rights. They have the right to go back, review, ask questions, and so that's what they did. And they presented things which our members, our detectives, had to go back and follow up on. And I give our detectives credit, both the criminal detectives and the professional standards detectives. You know, it's never easy in these cases. It's never, you know, something they want to do, but they understand this is what we have to do, because we have to do it for the trust of our citizens, and we also have to do it for those kids that were in there, in that room, and for the parents that were in there. So I go back to it. It's a difficult process. It was a long process, but I thank our members because they did an outstanding job. Two things I just want to point out is that one student who was in there made a comment to our detectives that he has seen the former member do this in the past, using his actions to manipulate the gun up and down out of its holster. The second thing was the former member had admitted during the investigation he has a bad habit of fidgeting with his gun. You know, these are all things that just lead to the fact of the actions that were taken that day. I also want to say that our members are trained on our weapons, on proper handling, and the actions that the former member displayed are nothing that we train. We train for the opposite, that every time you use that weapon, you have to remember it is a deadly weapon. You use it only in those type of situations. So again, I go back to the fact that, you know, I'm thankful for our members for their action, to the parents and the citizens out there, and know that, you know, we will handle these matters the proper way, we investigate them the proper way, and people are held accountable for their actions. So with that, is there any questions?
Was the conduct unbecoming? Was that because he wasn't completely truthful, or?
No, because you should not be, the charges, conduct unbecoming is because you should not be utilizing your weapon in that manner and putting those kids at risk. And so his actions of using his hands, fidgeting with the gun, manipulating in a manner that caused it to discharge, those actions would cause the actions to, you know, for conduct unbecoming that put those people at risk around him.
Can you elaborate what he was doing with the gun? Was it out of the holster, or what was he doing that caused it to fire?
Yeah, the weapon was coming in and out. You can see in the video that he's lifting up and down. As to what actually caused it to go off, you know, that's still unknown, but his actions are what caused it, whether it had been his finger that was in there, or if he had another artifact, there was some other, you know, keys or something he had in there that when it slipped back down. But ultimately it comes down to, if you leave the gun in a holster, it's not going to go off, which the test proved that, from the Pasco Sheriff's Office looking at the weapon to the Florida Department of Law Enforcement testing the weapon, the gun was functioning properly. What was improper were the actions of the former member to manipulate it, play with it, pull it in and out of its holster, and then when he put it back down, either it was his finger or keys or something caused that gun to go off, but that something is his actions.
I think the initial reports were that he had been leaning up against a wall and it went off, but it sounds like the investigation found that's not the case.
Yeah, so what our investigators did, we actually went back. And so they actually measured his height, where he was standing, the video of it. And so from the investigation and what I've heard from the investigation part of it is that he would have had to have been about 2 feet shorter, for that action to have occurred. So yes, no, that's why I said it took so long, because anything that the defense brought up, we had to go back and check on it to verify that, was it his actions or just something else? And so it's a balancing act. It takes a long time, but through the investigation it was proven that only one thing caused that gun to go off. It was him.
Was he bored, or why was he doing that?
He admitted that he has a bad habit. He fidgets, and he was playing with his gun. These guns are not toys, and that's the one thing we reiterate with our members. These are not toys. These are not things you play with. You have to treat these weapons. They're deadly. These things should only be pulled out and utilized when you're either training at the range in a proper setting, or you have to use it for deadly force because your life or somebody else's life is on the line.
When it comes to future training, do you think this would be a good example to teach maybe people in this profession in their infancy something not to do?
Yeah, I mean, they are brought to the range for, weeks, and, they're out there for hundreds. I mean, it is beat into their head from the very, very beginning. It was just a very bad decision, very bad, horrible decision that, unfortunately, you can't, people make bad decisions in life. As many times, when we show or we talk about those other people, they're like, yeah, you don't play with your weapon like that. So it's one of those things that, and I can imagine after this today, it's going to be brought up again. People are going to talk about this because it affects the organization. But it's one of those things that, I can imagine instructors will be out there and say, just to reiterate, don't be stupid and play with your gun when you're around kids.
How long had he been with the sheriff's office and assigned to Waitman?
He had been with the sheriff's office, I believe, since 2005, and I think he started there. I think he's been at Waitman for about 2 years. All right. And I know there's another, we want to talk about the Publix incident, so if you give us 2 minutes, we'll regroup and we'll be back for that.